Welcome back. You're listening to the panel discussion, Hybrid Strategies for Today's New Normal, sponsored by Equinix Government Solutions on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guests today are David Catanoso, the Director of Enterprise Cloud Solutions Office at the Department of Veterans Affairs, John Hale, the Chief of Cloud Services at the Defense Information Systems Agency, David Peed, the Vice President and General Manager at Equinix Government Solutions, and Cameron Cherry, the Federal Chief Technology Officer for Dell Technologies. We've heard during our discussion today on hybrid cloud, security has come up several times. So let's dig into that a little bit. Let me start with John Hale from DISA. DISA, again, you guys were first out the gate in many ways when it came to cloud. You mentioned earlier on that it was the security, the understanding that you can be secure, the understanding that the just moving things to the cloud doesn't mean it's a Wild West free-for-all. Talk a little bit about how the security now plays a bigger role as DISA and DoD more broadly moves data applications to the edge.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Traditionally when we've looked at applications in the data center, we've kind of done it defense in depth. And when we started moving applications to the cloud, we took that same approach. We tried to take that same model that we've used in traditional data centers, and we just shifted it to the cloud in this defense in depth mechanism. And the way I like to kind of paint that picture for most people is if you picture, like a railroad. You have a series of signals and switches that are sometimes controlled by central command. But once a train passes through a signal or passes through a switch, what happens on that train in between that and the next signal is kind of unknown, right? It's completely unknown to the system. You just kind of trust that the engineers are doing what they're supposed to be doing in that time period in between those spots. And you kind of just check to make sure that the train hits the right mark at the right time as it's going down the line. But you don't really have this defense in depth. You don't have a complete trust about what's going on the train. When you shift that to like modern transport organizations, trucking agencies, they have the ability to monitor a truck real time. They can tell you where the truck is, what speed the truck's going. They can tell you when the last time the driver took a break. They can sometimes see the driver. If there's a person who's not supposed to be authorized in the vehicle, they have the ability to shut the vehicle down. So they've really kind of gone into what I would call the zero trust model, right? Which is you don't necessarily just trust that the truck's going to pass through the red lights at the right time or that they're going to obey the laws, but you kind of go all the way down with as many sensors as possible to provide that security necessary to provide that capability to your mission partners in your workforce. And we see that shift in the network going the same way in the cloud. This has specifically done it in the past. We've built our cloud access points where we control traffic to and from the cloud capabilities from a departmental perspective. But where we see the department really going is that zero trust model, where we place as many sensors as close to the end applications as possible, and you actually make the applications themselves become sensors, and you monitor all that information real time and make real time decisions about access and control and data flow and those kind of things. And I think that moving to that model is going to dramatically change how fast we bring things to our mission partners when new capabilities are demanded or new things come along, and how secure we can ultimately provide that capability to our end users from a data perspective.
I love the train analogy. You can't, if you can always fit in the railroad analogy during.
I'm a railroad guy, so that's me. So yeah.
Excellent. I want to just touch upon though this idea of making the applications almost as sensors and monitoring real time. Does that add a level of complexity that a lot of apps don't have, or as maybe this is a better question for maybe someone like Cameron, but are the applications being built today to kind of have those additional capabilities in there? Like, it just seems to me to become more complex, but not because, but necessary.
Yeah, Jason, it's a really brilliant point. And I share with you, I love John's analogy because there's so many parallels into the digital world in that analog. You're spot on as far as the assertion here. This is why you see the rise of things like DevSecOps, right? Which is, the secure way to do DevOps. We refer to these as fourth generation applications. These are applications that are born cloud native. And there's a lot of instrumentation. You know, John made a really brilliant point about sensors. And I like to refer to them as tripwires, right? Because they're tripwires from a cybersecurity perspective that needs to inform someone to either take action or maybe an automated process to take action to make sure the application is still safe and secure. When you start to move into the world of software-defined and software-defined networking, where you can microsegment the network using software, you get the ability now to do exactly, Jason, what you asserted in your opening comments, which is I can move the security as close to the application workload as possible now. You know, it's available now in the world to do things like app defense right at the workload level, where I'm creating software-based or virtual firewalls right at the application to complement that zero trust that John's talked about. I think what you're seeing, Jason, is there's a lot of talk around how cloud makes apps more secure. That's true. That's true, but it's a complement between the cloud provider and the actual customer focusing on that workload and focusing on how people get access to it, where the data goes, what's connected to that workload. So it's forcing more security and cyber awareness around that workload itself.
Let me bring Dave from VA back into the conversation, because I think something that Cameron mentioned about the microsegmentation and SDN and complements to zero trust all fits in with the VA mission, in the sense of you have doctors and nurses and health professionals who sometimes don't worry about the cybersecurity, or maybe aren't as familiar with cybersecurity and the things that they need to do to keep their data and their applications and their patients secure. So you really, in some ways, have to do it for them. Maybe, Dave, talk a little bit about how VA is adopting, if you will, if not SDN and microsegmentation, but at least these concepts to keep the users, the patients, the veterans safe.
Right. So I think the rural analogy was really good. We basically use a similar approach at the VA traditionally, where it's defend the perimeter, defense in depth of the traditional data center. And we did also extend that same model into the cloud when we first started migrating applications to the cloud and standing up our enterprise cloud environments. We at the VA maintained 4 trusted internet connections under the TIC 2.0 model, where, you know, essentially all the traffic flows to and from our cloud environments through those 4 access points. But with the event of COVID and the advent of TIC 3.0, which provides for that ability to set up your security in a more point of presence nature, we've been leaning very heavily into leveraging that to expand our telework capacity. So we're actually doing a lot with app defense, as was mentioned before, and leveraging a lot of the cloud native monitoring and instrumentation capabilities that both Azure and Amazon provide, as well as we have several other vendors where we've brought into our enterprise cloud and set up platforms for application performance and security monitoring. We're leveraging a SaaS-based cloud broker, access security broker tool, to monitor all our internet traffic as it flows through the network. So we're leveraging many capabilities in a layered way, but putting them at the point of presence to really get right out to the edge and protect our users.
I think the broker tool is something that's starting, the cloud access broker tool is something that's starting to gain some popularity. Can you talk maybe just a little bit more about how that works? Because since it's SaaS, it's in the cloud, obviously, but talk a little bit more.
Yep. So we leverage FedRAMP very heavily to take advantage of SaaS capabilities, and so we've got a cloud access security broker tool that's FedRAMP certified. We also use that we ingest a lot of log data into that tool, but we also use it to monitor traffic in real time. Certain traffic flows go through the tool, and it's able to analyze that with a lot of capability, artificial intelligence, et cetera, behind the scenes, and provide reporting and alerting to our cybersecurity team in terms of threats that might be hitting the network, so they can react very quickly and respond, almost in real time.
Excellent. I think that's something that's going to, again, gain some popularity as we are looking forward. Dave Peed from Equinix, when it comes to security and the platform, as you guys are running the platform there, what are some of the things you're seeing from your government customers? Are they asking you about security? Of course they are, but what are they asking you? What are some of the trends?
Yeah, I mean, security is always top of mind. And as we are the platform / physical infrastructure that the agencies and partners connect into. So, we have all of our continental United States data centers are FISMA high. We have 2 purpose-built data centers, 1 in Florida and 1 in Culpeper. And 3 of those, 2 in Virginia and Florida, we have significant space where the government can house very sensitive data. And so from our perspective, a lot of conversation turns to the physical piece of it. And on the network side, we rely on our partners like Dell and others that are, really helping them more on the network security side. Now, certainly we secure our platforms, but conversely, with our Cloud Exchange platform, which is the interconnective tissue between our data centers, 217 data centers, we do allow for the software-defined networking companies to integrate into that fabric and create architectures that are from the network and from the data center perspective, kind of stand up and tear down at their will.
One of the things about moving to the cloud that is, again, another benefit that we're starting to see is this use of AI, machine learning, deep analytics. So maybe Dave from VA, jump in here for a little bit. And VA, again, you have so much data, you have so much information that is kind of coming through. Are you guys starting to look at AI? I know you guys have launched an office of AI or an AI center of excellence, whatever term we're using these days. How have you started to kind of marry the two hybrid cloud approach with these new emerging technologies?
Yeah, so absolutely. We definitely have a lot of corporate data throughout the VA in all different spaces, healthcare, benefits, and memorials. And we've got over 13 petabytes now just in our enterprise cloud alone, not to mention what we have on-prem. So we're extending our data warehouse capability up into both clouds, as well as leveraging SaaS technology. We got services from both of our cloud providers that we're taking advantage of. And during the pandemic itself, we took advantage of some AI to build some chatbots to immediately provide front-end facing capabilities to our veterans and the general public in terms of, COVID response, answer questions, but potentially evaluate in terms of when you could seek treatment, et cetera. And that we rolled that out in a matter of weeks in response to the demand that came up, as we all know, unexpectedly. So the cloud really makes it possible to respond quickly to things, even in that space, right, and take advantage of these tools that are really excellent provided by the cloud providers.
John Hale, also from DISA, let's jump in here too, because walk me through a little bit about DISA's use of these emerging technologies and tag it back if you can to the COVID response.
Yeah, so I will tell you that from a COVID response perspective, specifically around cloud consumption network services, this is something that we've worked very closely with David Pede on. Is our bandwidth requirements have gone up 200 times. Now that's not 200%. That's 200 times what we were doing just 6 months ago. And so as we move more and more, shift more and more stuff to the cloud, I get asked all the time from leadership, what's the right amount of bandwidth that we're going to get to? And I always laugh at that question because I don't know, right? So as more and more of our mission partners are continuing to leverage more and more of the cloud, I don't know what the end of that, how big that bucket's ultimately going to be. But we are at a point right now where we're rolling out, a 200 times increase in bandwidth capability to the cloud. So that's really where a lot of our focus has been over the last probably 2 months, has been getting all that stuff in place so that we can add that much bandwidth to our mission partners' needs.
Feels like never enough bandwidth, right?
Exactly.
The
pipe's never big enough.
That's what my kids say, never enough Wi-Fi.
Yep.
We're just about out of time. Cameron, let me ask you to close this out. As we look forward, whether it's the new normal or the old normal or however it's going to look, where is the hybrid cloud? What are we seeing in the next year or so in terms of how agencies can continue to take advantage of these technologies and services?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jason. And I think it would serve us to bring this whole conversation together. You think of hybrid, it's helped us respond and react in a very favorable way to this type of crisis. So the hybrid strategy is clearly working. I think the second thing is we're eventually going to get to a point where we're going to stop talking about cloud as a primary technology because we're going to fully recognize it's an operating model. It's modern engineering rather than a destination, right? When we think of cloud as a destination, it's so limiting. When you think of what's coming with edge computing, which really is going to take cloud to a whole different level, you think of the convergence of what's happening with 5G, to John's point about bandwidth, 5G is more than just bandwidth. It's about the software-defined nature of what this generation of technology is going to provide us. that's going to take us back to this distributed edge and this distributed capability, which is really going to bring the user experience and the capability and the computing capability closer to that tactical edge to be able to provide those more rich capabilities to users all around the globe, wherever they may be. And it's all going to be underpinned, Jason, that we talked about this, by that zero trust model, right? Because we don't know where users are going to be at times, and we don't know what devices they may be using to access this sensitive information. So we have to make sure we can truly authenticate who was on the network, but also what is on the network. And I'm excited about what the future holds, because it's not just about cloud, it's about what it does to underpin mission execution and a lot of the great things that our government's doing.
Excellent. I think we all should be excited for the future. I agree with you that not just the cloud, but this operating model and the pandemic there's always a little bit of a silver lining to look for. But this has been a great conversation, but unfortunately that's all the time we have for today. So let me thank my guests, David Catanoso, the Director of Enterprise Cloud Solutions Office at the Department of Veterans Affairs, John Hale, the Chief of Cloud Services at the Defense Information Systems Agency, David Peed, the Vice President and General Manager at Equinix Government Solutions, and Cameron Cherry, the Federal Chief Technology Officer for Dell Technologies. I'm Jason Miller, and you've been listening to the panel discussion, Hybrid Strategies for Today's New Normal, sponsored by Equinix Government Solutions on Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Equinix.